Hello, hello.
Hello.
So today we're gonna study chapter 18 and 19. But from chapter 18, each chapter is categorized by theme.
Oh, fantastic.
So, but there are only 4 exercises, and each exercise has a different style of question.
Oh, very interesting. Okay.
So,
And what is the theme of chapter 18 then?
chapter 18 is about interesting anecdotes.
Oh, fantastic. Anecdotes means like stories.
Exactly.
Fantastic.
So, are you ready?
I'm ready. Are you ready?
Then time for exercise 1.
Very good. So,
So first of all, let's click.
we're going to click everything on our wonderful PPT by...
Kim-san.
Very good.
So this one is about, we have to choose incorrect sentence, right? Okay. So are you ready to read the text?
I am ready.
Okay, then here we go.
Get that done. Okay. Over 2,000 years ago, out of the skies in the sacred Black Hills of the Sioux came a young woman. Carried by a cloud, she brought for the Sioux people a sacred bundle containing a pipe. The young woman stayed with her people for 4 days. She taught them 7 ceremonies about personal purification, marriage, child rearing, and other important moments in her people's lives. After the 4 days, the young woman, now known to her people as White Buffalo Calf Woman, returned to the sky. Leaving her pipe, named by her people as the White Buffalo Calf Pipe, she asked them to take care of it until her return. How would her people know when she would come back? They asked. She told them to watch for the birth of a white buffalo. It would be during this time she would come back to purify the world. Until this day, her people, waiting her return, have kept the White Buffalo Calf Pipe. In Wisconsin, in 1994, a baby white buffalo was born. To those who know this ancient story, it was the miracle they were waiting for.
So what is the story about?
Well, it's a legend, really.
Legend.
Yeah. So a traditional legend about sort of a deity, sort of a religious, godlike person who, for the Sioux people, taught them how to live properly, and said one day they would come back and they have to keep this sacred object until she returns. And the moment she comes back is when a white buffalo is born.
So the white buffalo was born really, eh?
And in 1994 there was one. And so I guess they're waiting for her to come now.
I guess she came back, eh?
Maybe she did.
Maybe,
Maybe
who
it's
knows?
Choo-Choo's wife.
Yeah. All right then. Let's check each, option, right? So the first one says, carried by cloud, she came out of the skies in black hills. Is this correct?
Black Hills. The one we stay with her. Oh wait.
So
Carried by a cloud. Did it say came out of a cloud?
carried by a cloud,
Oh.
she came out of the skies in black hills. So first sentence and second sentence together, right? So out of the skies, right? The young woman came out of the skies.
And that sounds correct. Are we looking for correct or incorrect answer?
We have to find the incorrect one.
So the first one is correct.
Correct one.
Yes.
That's right. And number 2, she taught the Sioux 7 ceremonies.
She did. We have this right here. 7 ceremonies. She taught them. That's exactly
That's
the
right.
sentence. Yeah.
And number 3, after spending 4 days with the Sioux people, she returned to the sky.
Oh, 4 days. Return to the sky. Right there.
So it's correct again, right? So number 4, she asked the Sioux to take good care of the pipe she left.
she asked them to take care of it until her return.
That's right. All right. So the last one must be the answer then. Huh? Number
Right.
5 says, today the Sioux do not keep the white buffalo calf pipe she left.
Oh, but
She
they
does not keep? They do not keep? No, they
until
do keep.
yes, they do. Until this day, her people waiting her have kept the white buffalo calf pipe. They've
So they have kept the white buffalo calf pipe she left. Huh?
That's right.
Until today, until this day. Huh?
Yes.
All right, so I have one question though. So it says sentence, which one is sentence 9? Until this day, her people waiting her return. Don't you think there should be 4 waiting for her return?
It does sound awkward, and waiting for her return is grammatically correct.
I think so.
And my first instinct was awaiting her return.
So
Awaiting.
await is transitive, verb, right? So waiting is intransitive,
Yeah,
verb. So you have to put 4. Because the last sentence says they were waiting for.
And there's 4 right there, yeah. So I would prefer to change it either your way or my way. Both ways would sound better.
Yeah.
Waiting for her return or awaiting her return.
So out of curiosity, I just asked you. All right then.
Very good.
Let's move on to exercise 2. Here we go.
Ooh.
All right.
So what do we have to do in exercise 2?
We have to find the title.
Oh my. Okay.
Okay.
So are we going to clickety?
Yes, please.
Okay. Here we go.
Okay, so are you ready to read the story?
I am.
Okay, then here we go.
Here we go. On a visit one evening to Nathaniel Hawthorne and his wife, Herman Melville, Moby Dick author, told them a story of a fight he had witnessed on an island in the South Seas, in which one of the Polynesian warriors had wreaked havoc among his foes with a heavy club. Striding about the room, Melville demonstrated the feats of bravery and the desperate drama of the battle. After he had gone, Mrs. Hawthorne thought she remembered that he had left empty-handed and wondered, where is that club with which Mr. Melville was laying about him so? Mr. Hawthorne maintained that he must have taken it with him, and indeed, a search of the room revealed nothing. The next time they saw him, they asked him what had happened to the club. It turned out that there was no club. It had simply been a figment of their imagination, conjured up by the vividness of Melville's narrative.
Ooh, interesting. Huh? They're all famous. Nathaniel Hawthorne and Homer Melville. They're famous writers, right?
Very famous, yes. They have classic novels in their biography.
I guess they are good friends, eh?
Many of the authors and artists of that era were good friends. Frankenstein was written during a dinner together, even.
Okay. So what is the story about then?
Well, the story is about these 2 authors joining for dinner one night and telling stories. And
Homer Melville was telling the story, eh?
and in specific, this story about a fight he saw, and he told the story so well that they actually thought he had brought a club, a stick with him.
Because one of the warriors, they used that fighting with his foes with a club, right? So
And
he demonstrated with pretending he had a club, right?
yeah, he pretended he was fighting, and it was so good, his storytelling, that they thought he actually had the prop.
Yeah.
But it turns out he did not bring anything with him.
I guess he's such a good storyteller, huh?
Yes. Moby Dick is a wonderful book about the whale and revenge.
So he didn't even have the club. Club is, what is club? It's like a golf club, huh?
It's a big stick.
Big stick.
A club could be a fighting stick.
So even though he didn't have that club, the Nathaniel Hawthorne and his wife, they thought that he had a club, right? Because it was the storytelling, the way he told the story was so vivid,
And it says here he was very
moving around,
animated. Yeah, he was moving around, and it made them think he was really fighting.
Yeah. So that's why the answer is what? Number
5 here. Melva's storytelling that made something out of nothing.
Because he didn't have the club, but that they thought he had a club, right?
That's right.
So that's why he made something out of nothing, right? The storytelling.
Yeah, and the other ones are not correct because the power of Melville's novels, it only discusses one novel, number 1. The lifelong friendship of 2 great novelists, well, perhaps.
But they didn't talk about
They didn't
the
talk
friendship.
about it, yeah.
And number 3?
Imagination can be the best source of great stories, but it is a real story, not imagination.
And number 4?
House owners' creative way of entertaining their guests. That's a fun answer, but not the correct one.
That's right. All right, then let's move on to exercise 3.
Okay. And
Oh.
we'll click. So what do we have to do in this one?
In exercise 3, we have to find grammatically incorrect one.
Oh, grammatically incorrect. Okay, and we know now. I take it as number 5, right? Okay.
All right, then.
About 20 years ago, Ray Anderson, the late CEO of the immensely successful carpet manufacturer Interface, had what he described as an epiphany. Here he was, with more money than he or his heirs would know what to do with, when he realized that his company was poisoning the environment. Carpet making is, or was, a petroleum-intensive industry, and his company's environmental footprint was huge. Anderson wondered what good it would do to leave his grandchildren great wealth if the price of accumulating that wealth was an uninhabitable planet. So Anderson resolved to transform every aspect of his company's operations, moving to achieve a zero-footprint goal by 2020. He assumed what the development of new production processes and a commitment to pollution control would cost money. A lot of it. But he was willing to sacrifice the bottom line to achieve a social good.
Wow. So what is the story about?
Well, it's about a very successful, rich company founder.
Carpet manufacturer. Huh?
Yeah. He created a carpet company. And his family was going to inherit, his heirs, that means the people who inherit your money, were going to inherit a great deal of wealth. But he started to feel guilty about the environmental impact his company had.
Yeah.
And so he made a goal for himself to reduce his carbon footprint, which means his effect, his bad effect on the environment.
So carbon footprint and environmental footprint is the same thing then, eh?
Yes.
So he thought about the environment and then...
And he changed the way his company manufactured its product.
So even though it cost a lot of money, but he did so, to achieve the social goal.
That's right. And it's a good example for his heirs, his family who will inherit, because maybe they will continue that process.
Yeah. All right, then. This is a grammar question, right? So for grammar lessons, I speak Korean, right?
Ooh, exciting.
So are you ready? So here, let's take a look at number 1. Ooh. So number 1은 부사에 밑줄이 쫙 꺼져 있습니다. So 부사에 밑줄이 꺼져 있으면 이 부사가 뭘 수식하는지 봐야 됩니다. So 부사는 그의 명사를 제외하고 모든 걸 수식할 수 있죠. 뒤에 보니까 타란 형용사를 수식하고 있네요. Immensely successful. 아주 엄청나게 성공적인. There's no problem, right? Okay, then let's move on to number 2. So 2번은 than의 밑줄이 쫙. 그러면 앞에 비교급이 있는지만 확인해 주면 됩니다. 비교급 뭐나 여기 있네. More money than bingo. correct합니다. Okay, now number 3는 여기 to live의 밑줄이 쫙 꺼져 있네요. 전체적인 문장을 좀 봐줘야 될 것 같습니다. So Anderson은 wondered 했다. What good it would do. 이게 뭔가 싶죠. 그래서 여기서 do good은 do에서 왔습니다. do good 하면 이익이 되다. 여기서 good은 명사로 사용되었습니다. 명사. So as a noun, good, what does that mean? It's like a help, right? So 도움이 되다, kind of 도움이 되다는 뜻이고. 그러면 앞으로 왜 땡겼냐면, 자, 간접 의문입니다. 간접 의문은 의문사 플러스 주어 동사 순으로 써주면 됩니다. 그래서 어떤 도움이 될 것인가? is은 뜻이 없네요. to 부정사가 그러면 진짜 주어. to 이해하는 게 어떤 도움이 될 것인지. He wondered. Anderson이 wondered. 궁금해했다. 그래서 what은 그러면 간접 의문은 의문사 플러스 주어 동사. So what 다음에 그 명사이기 때문에 의미는 형용사 가능하죠. 그래서 어떤 도움이 그것이 될 것인가? 뭐 하는 게 to leave his grandchildren에게 great wealth를. leave는 사형식으로 그의 grandchildren에게 엄청난 부를 남기는 것이 어떤 도움이 될 것인지를 궁금했다. 이렇게겠죠? 그래서 correct합니다. Okay, to leave, no problem. Okay? 자, 그 다음 number 4. Let's move on to number 4. Where is it? moving이네요. 자, ing의 밑줄을 꺼져 있으면 얘가 ing인지 pp인지 아니면 문장에서 동사의 기능을 하는지 봐야 됩니다. 자, 이 문장에서는 이미 Anderson은 resolved, 결심했다. 주어 동사 다 나왔습니다. 그러면 동사의 기능을 할 필요 없이 분사구문이구나. 분사구문에서 ing냐 pp인지를 봐주면 되겠죠. 그럼 여기서는 moving이 그는 결심을 했는데 결심했다. 뭘 결심했냐면 to transfer every aspect of his company's operation을 모든 면을 transform하기로 결심했습니다. 그리고 조치를 취했다. 여기서 move는 조치를 취하다는 자동사 그러면 moving, no problem, right? So let's move on to number 5. 5번. 자, 5번에 what의 밑줄을 짜겠네요. 일단 이게 관계대명사인가 한번 생각해봐야겠죠. 근데 앞에 선행사 없습니다. 맞나? 한번 생각해보면. 근데 뒤에 보니까 이게 관계대명사 what이 되려면 뒤에 불완전한 문장이 와야 됩니다. 주어가 없거나 목적어 없어야 되는데 주어가 있습니다. development and commitment가 주어고 맞죠? 그리고 나서 동사 cost고 money. 돈, 비용이 든다. 완벽한 문장입니다. Oh my goodness. 그러면, what이 아니네. 아닙니다. 그러면 이거 뭐라고 되냐면, 대수로 바꿔줍니다. 이 assume의 전체적으로 목적으로 쓰였구나. 그는 that야라고 가정했다. 생각했다. 되겠죠. 이 주어가 엄청난 돈이 들 것이라고. 그래서 명사절, that. That's it. So number 5 is wrong.
That's right. That was exciting.
It was exciting.
You're like a ball of energy. Wow.
Alright, then let's move on to exercise 4.
Dun, 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 dun. Oh my.
It's a long story, huh?
So what are we trying to do here?
So we have to put the story in order. Wow.
Okay. So we have to make ourselves very small here. Look at us.
My.
We're tiny.
So are you
Okay.
ready? So you
Now-
gotta read it in order, huh?
C-A-B. But I read this part first up here? Okay.
Here we go.
Mirror neurons were first discovered by a group of researchers at the University of Parma in Italy in 1996. This discovery is considered one of the biggest neuroscientific breakthroughs in recent times. It completely changes our understanding of how the brain works. The discovery came through a serendipitous event known as the raisin incident. Italian scientists were observing a monkey's brain activity during various physical movements. The team decided to take a break. One of the researchers standing near the monkey picked up a raisin and popped it into his mouth. As the monkey watched him, the monkey's brain fired in exactly the same way as if the monkey himself had picked up and eaten the raisin. Simply watching the movement triggered the same brain activity as the actual event. This phenomenon had never been demonstrated before. In 2005, this same Italian team found that when people listened to stories about other people doing something, the listeners' brains fired as if they themselves were actually doing what was described in the stories. Wow.
Wow. Interesting story, huh?
Very interesting.
Oh, yeah? So what is the story about?
Well, it's about neuroscience, which is the science of how the brain functions. And scientists from Italy, they discovered that from researching monkeys, that just witnessing an event can trigger reactions in the brain the same as doing the event. And so then they discovered even just telling a story triggers the brain the same way as if you were doing the event in the story.
So by watching and by listening, they can, their brain also activate. All right.
Yes.
Okay, so we have to put the story in order, right?
That's
so
right.
the sentences in a box, it talks about what? Discovery.
That's right. So discovery, because it says it completely changed our understanding. A breakthrough is a discovery.
Right. So it talks about the discovery, see, right? And then the monkeys and also, or the scientist, right? Talks about, talks about scientist, Italian scientist and monkey, right? It says all monkey, right?
That's
in C.
right.
And then A says
The monkey.
The monkey. And also one of the researchers. Researchers refers to the Italian scientist, right? B cannot become because this phenomenon, they still didn't talk about the phenomenon, right?
That's right.
So C and then A.
Yes, and they're taking a break, and they're having a raisin break.
Yeah, raisin break. They're eating raisin, right? So monkey was watching the scientist eating raisins.
He's a little jealous of the raisins.
So, but the monkey's brain works the way, scientists.
Yeah, we have to assume that the monkey was still attached to the machine, registering his brain activity.
So the wires, eh?
Yeah, so he was watching, and so the computers reacted to the monkey's brain reaction.
That's why the monkey's brain fired. Why do they use fire then? Maybe the brain, they can see the, kind of fires because it's all a test.
True, but it's also because the brain is it's like a machine, and it operates on electrical impulses. So there's actually electricity happening inside of our brain, and when we fire something, we start something, or it shoots something. And neurons, when we look up here, it has the word neurons. Neurons in technical language fire because they're shooting electricity from one neuron to another. And that's why we use the word fire.
I see.
Yeah,
So
it doesn't mean flame fire.
I see.
It means to activate.
Activate,
fire.
I see.
So we fire a gun.
Fire gun.
It activates or shoots.
Trigger. kind of.
Trigger, exactly.
I see. And then B, this phenomenon refers to what?
The phenomenon of your brain activating something that you actually haven't done, but the brain thinks it's happening.
Watching, the scenes he
Observing,
was
or listening.
So B talks about another example, right? Just the listening to story. Also, the listener's brain fired, right?
Yes.
All right then. So that's why the answer is C, A, B, right?
Fantastic.
All right then. Time for chapter 19.
Now, what is chapter 19 about?
Chapter 19 is about here philosophy, religion, history, customs, and geography.
Ooh. How exciting.
Okay, so are you ready? All right then, time for exercise 1.
Exercise 1. Oh, good.
So exercise 1 is about
Do we-
where the sentence belongs.
Okay, where this sentence goes. Okay, do we click, click, click? Click, 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 clickety.
All right then.
Whoa.
Are you ready?
I am ready.
Okay then, here we
Okay.
go.
Almost all major ethical theories in Western philosophy implicate the emotions in one way or another. In some of these theories, emotions are essential to morality, and in others, they are not. But even those authors who deny that emotions are essential usually find a place for them in moral psychology. This is true even for Kant, who is notorious for arguing that morality depends on reason rather than sentiment. In Kant's system, reason tells us that we follow the moral law, but acting from the moral law begins with respect for the law, which is constituted by respect for persons, which is a natural consequence of recognizing the dignity of each person as a law-governed agent. In addition to respect, Kant claims that moral judgments are accompanied by moral feelings. It is difficult to find a philosopher who does not think emotions are important to morality.
Philosophy, huh?
Yes.
It is tough to understand, right?
Yes, it's tough to follow philosophy. It takes many years to study philosophy.
That's right. And so what is the story about?
Well, it's saying that many philosophers say that your emotions create morality. And even for the philosophers that don't put so much emphasis on emotions, they still say, so they use Kant as an example, they still say it's sort of a chicken or the egg kind of situation, which comes first. And they're saying even Kant's philosophy begins with a moral understanding of a respect for humans as individuals that then follows into creating laws of morality for how you lead your life.
So even Kant usually, he emphasizes on reason, right? So reason, but even when it comes to morality, he thinks, emotions are important to morality. Yeah?
That's right. So his reasoning for morality is sort of logic-based. But that logic at the very base is developed from the morality that you must respect individual people and their equality to you.
I see. So the sentence talks about, even those authors who deny that emotions are essential. So we have to find the sentence, emotions are not essential, right? So if you take a look at sentence, second one, right? In some of these theories, emotions are essential to morality. And in others, they are not essential to morality, right? So we have to put the sentence behind it, don't you think?
That's right. And also the hint also is even those authors, and then it talks about a specific
Kant.
author. Yeah.
I see. All right, then. So that's why number 2 is the answer, right?
That's right.
Okay, then let's move on to exercise 2.
2. Oh, very good.
So number 2, we have to find the best title.
Ooh, title time.
It's quite a long story, right?
Oh my, we got small again.
So are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, ready. Here we go.
One factor that may partially explain the rise of philosophy among the Greeks may lie in the special characteristics of Greek religion and mythology. In Greek culture, just as in India and China, religion and poetry existed long before philosophy as a recognizable activity. Educated Greeks absorbed religion not only through cultic worship, but also through the Homeric epic poems and later in the tragedies of such playwrights as Aeschylus and Sophocles. Greek religion, as presented in these poetic forms, embodies many tensions and sometimes seems to present outright contradictions. The gods are presented as immortal and noble, to be worshipped and honored, but they are also described as engaging in behavior that seems far from honorable. To a thoughtful person, Greek religion left many questions about the nature of the gods and their relation to the world unanswered, and this perhaps contributed to the growth of philosophical reflection as well. Certainly, from the earliest period, we see Greek philosophers questioning and correcting the religious traditions handed down to them.
Wow, huh? So what is the story about?
Well, it's very interesting because it says that the old Greek religion was influenced by the poetry of the time because it was okay to sort of criticize or show the gods in contradictions. So even though the gods were these fantastic beings that controlled everything, they had characteristics to their personality that made their behavior contradict nobility, and so you didn't always admire them. Some of their actions or behavior were not honorable.
Yeah, the gods are presented usually as immortal or noble, right? But the way they act in a poem or the tragedies, sometimes the way they act was far from honorable, right? So,
But these were also sort of lessons in themselves. Like, think of Aesop. It's showing the negative aspect of people's character as well. And so what happened is it created philosophy because people started to question the behavior.
is that right? Something like
Right.
that.
Is this a good way to behave or not? And so philosophy grew out of
I see.
the poetry and religious study.
So this is about how philosophy developed in Greek culture, huh?
Yeah.
I see. So how did they start? By questioning the gods, right? So questioning in sentence, what does that mean? Questioning the gods led to the development of Greek philosophy.
Yeah, questioning the gods. And it doesn't just mean to wonder if gods are real or not. It means to actually wonder if their actions are appropriate.
I see.
Right? When the god did that in the legend or story, was that a good thing or a bad thing? And that's questioning their actions.
Yeah, maybe the way they act, the way the god act is quite different from what I thought, So they were questioning, huh?
And that in itself is a lesson. Like, don't do like that god did. That was evil, or that was mean, or bullying. Right?
So they talk about it and questioning and correcting,
Sure. Or the opposite. They said, oh, do like that god did because they did a nice thing. And so this becomes the philosophy and morality of the times.
I see. So let's take a look at each option, okay? Number one, what is it?
Unique characteristics of Greek mythology.
It's not about Greek mythology. What about number two?
Portrayals of Greek gods in modern literature. No, it doesn't talk about modern books.
What about number three?
Academic traditions that nurtured great Greek philosophers. It does mention two philosophers, but it doesn't
Talk about
Talk about-
nurturing.
or academic tradition.
No. What about number four?
Questions and answers. The essence of philosophical journeys. It's close, but it doesn't mention Greek, which is the main focus here,
I see.
right? Because it's close. It's a
Can be confusing, hey?
well, it's a good distraction.
Yeah, good distraction.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
But this one, questioning the gods, led to the development of Greek philosophy. So this is
Greek philosophy, started, eh?
yeah. So this is the best answer. Absolutely.
Because we have to choose the best title, right?
That's right.
Okay, now let's move on to exercise 3.
Very good. Ooh,
Okay.
click clickety. What do we have to do here?
Here, we have to find incorrect word in text.
Oh my. Okay.
All right, then. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, I'm ready too. Here we go.
The place of women in Aboriginal culture has been interpreted in many different ways. Ethnocentric European travelers mistakenly describe these women as degraded and passive servants of the men. The seemingly sharp gender divisions in the activity spheres of Aboriginal society made it difficult for anthropologists to obtain a balanced picture. Early anthropologists were mostly men who necessarily observed male culture and talked to male informants. these male anthropologists were also quite comfortable with the male superiority view because it corresponded closely to their own Victorian biases. Victorian anthropologists considered women in general to be spiritually inferior and even described them as profane, whereas men were seen as sacred. More recent fieldwork by female anthropologists working with Aboriginal women confirmed the picture by showing that these women have a very active secret ritual life and exercise considerable autonomy in domestic affairs.
So what is the story about?
Well, the story is about how when the Aborigine, the Australian native people, were first encountered by Europeans, all the social scientists were men, and they interpreted Aboriginal society from a male perspective. But today, with more female anthropologists, scientists, we're getting a better understanding of Aboriginal culture and society.
Yeah, because they could, observe the female, people right there. And then how they were biased, right? The male anthropologists when they were studying Aboriginal culture, hey?
That's right.
Especially about the female Aboriginal culture.
Yes, so they would approach every culture they encountered from their own lens, their own cultural perspective, but also their gender. And so it would place a bias in the results of their findings.
And also, like a long time ago, the early anthropologists, they usually, when they study the Aboriginal culture, they studied with the male, the natives, right?
That's
and
right.
So watching them and,
Yeah, so they would only discuss the culture with the men of that culture.
Yeah.
And so they didn't get the female perspective.
They observed the male culture, and also it says, they talk to male informants, right? Not
That's
the
right.
female. Okay.
And that might have been because of both cultures were more patriarchal, more male-oriented. And so it might have been considered even rude to talk to the women.
I see.
In both cultures. And so that's
Back
a problem
then,
too, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so let's take a look at each, word, right? Number one says mistakenly described, right? Because at the end it says, when they studied with the female anthropologist, they found it out the women are active and also they had autonomy, right?
Yes.
So mistakenly described this woman as a degraded and passive servant. So it is correct then, eh?
That's right.
What about number two? Difficult.
So the sharp gender divisions and the activity spheres of Aboriginal society made it difficult for anthropologists to obtain a balanced picture. It was difficult. They didn't get it right.
So what native women did and what male native did is different, right? So it was hard for the male anthropologist to observe the female, natives, right?
That's right.
So it is difficult is correct. What about number three? Comfortable.
Yes, so we have these male anthropologists were also quite comfortable with the male superiority view because it corresponded to the Victorian bias. So as we mentioned before, the two cultures were both patriarchal, so male-oriented.
Yeah.
And so it matched their own culture, so it made sense to them.
So what they expected is correct. They think,
Exactly.
right? So they feel comfortable, with the male superiority.
And so that's true.
What about number four? Inferior. Inferior.
So they considered women in general to be spiritually inferior. And yes, the patriarchy means that there's a male superior, female inferior. So that is true.
And also it gives a hint, even describe them as profane, right? What does profane mean?
Sort of rude.
Yeah, rude and opposite of the sacred, eh?
Yes, and so profanity is a word that's used to mean like bad words.
Okay.
So profane is the root.
So you can even guess in that sentence too. Inferior is correct, right? What about number five? So you have to change confirmed into challenged.
Challenge. So more recent fieldwork by female anthropologists working with Aboriginal women challenged the picture by showing that these women have very active secrets. So
Yeah.
it showed the opposite.
Yeah.
So it didn't confirm, it challenged.
Because a male anthropologist said, women, they described women as degraded, inferior. But here, showing that, that these women are, active and also they had autonomy. It's so different from what the male anthropologist described.
That's right.
Women, right? So that's why number 5 is the answer.
Very good.
Okay, now let's move on to the last one. Exercise
4. Very good.
All right.
Oh
So
my.
here we need to fill in the blank.
Oh, we got very small. Let's move us over here. Hello.
Okay, so it's a long story. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, here we go.
Heidegger used the term Dasein, being there, for the being that exists. He rejected the idea that there is an external world separate from a conscious observer. Instead, he developed a phenomenological view, in which our understanding of things is always in relation to ourselves. For example, if you put on a jumper, it is because the jumper will keep you warm, or you think it will look good on you. It is not because the jumper is made of twisted yarn and is a few millimeters thick. This applies to knowledge, too. We might read a book about politics because it interests us, or because understanding politics helps us make sense of what we see happening around us. We see it in terms of a tool or satisfying a need. Heidegger saw the Dasein, principally the human being, as completely immersed in and part of the world that defines it. No separation between consciousness and environment is possible. Being there means that there, our context, is the defining aspect of being. We are not shut off from the world in an enclosed mind, which Heidegger calls the cabinet of consciousness.
Mom, another philosophical story, huh?
Yeah, that's a difficult one.
So what is the story about?
Well, he's talking about how the individual interacts with the world around them, and how they encounter the world in a way that meets their needs.
I see. So we see things in relation to ourselves, right? So we cannot separate consciousness from environment, right?
That's right.
So in a box, he rejected the idea. So we have to find the phrase that is opposite of what Heidegger thinks, right? Is that right?
Right here in the box here?
Yeah, because he rejected the idea that, right?
Yes.
So different from phenomenological view,
Right. So he had the opposite view of what others were saying.
No.
Oh.
You have to find the idea. We have to find the sentence from what he thinks, because he rejected the idea that, right? So the rest of the story talks about what he thinks about the world, right?
Right.
So it's a little confusing, right? So we have to find opposite of phenomenological view. Phenomenological view is like we see things in relation to ourselves, right? So we cannot separate consciousness from the environment, right? So that's why the number 4 is the answer. There is the external world separate from a conscious observer. We cannot separate. He thinks we cannot separate that, right?
Right.
So he rejected the idea. Number 4 is the answer.
He rejected that there's an external world separate from conscious observer, right? He did not reject these other things.
No, so that has nothing to do with the story, I guess. The rest.
Oh, that was a difficult one.
Yeah, I know, because it's so confusing when there's a reject the idea that so you have to choose the one what he thinks, the opposite of what he thinks.
Right.
You understand?
Because instead he thinks this.
Yeah, excellent. It is confusing,
Very good.
You have to pay attention.
Pay attention.
So that's it.
That is it.
That's all for today.
Choo-choo says goodbye.
In his dream. All right then. See you soon.
Take care.